Existentialism is a philosophy that says life has no pre-given meaning, so it's up to us to create one. It highlights freedom of choice, but with that freedom comes responsibility and often anxiety. Thinkers like Sartre and Camus argued that the universe is indifferent, sometimes even absurd, yet we still must act. The core idea is that meaning isn't found, it's made, and each decision shapes who we become. But what if meaning doesn't exist at all? Nihilism is the belief that life has no objective purpose, values, or truths. It suggests that morality, religion, and meaning are human constructions rather than universal laws. While this can feel bleak, it also frees people to decide their own path. The challenge is avoiding despair when nothing is absolute. Instead, nihilism can be seen as a blank canvas, urging us to paint meaning for ourselves. Some, however, see a third path: absurdism, the idea that life has no meaning, but we live anyway. Absurdism, most famously explored by Albert Camus, accepts that humans crave meaning, but the universe offers none. This clash creates the absurd. Camus argued we should not despair, nor escape into illusions, but instead embrace life fully. By acknowledging absurdity and still choosing to live, we find freedom. The absurd hero resists resignation, finding joy and defiance in daily choices, despite life's ultimate lack of answers. But if life is absurd, how much control do we really have? The debate between free will and determinism asks whether we truly choose our actions or whether everything is caused by prior events. Determinism argues our choices are shaped by genetics, environment, and history. Free will insists we still have personal agency. Many thinkers combine both, saying we may be influenced, but not fully controlled. The tension matters because it shapes how we think about morality and responsibility. That raises another question. Are we still who we were at the beginning? The Ship of Theseus asks whether something that has had all its parts replaced is still the same thing. If you swap one plank at a time, when does the ship stop being itself? The puzzle challenges how we define identity, both for objects and for ourselves as we grow and change. It raises questions about continuity, memory, and whether identity depends on form, function, or history. Change often demands tolerance, but how far can tolerance go? The paradox of tolerance, explained by Karl Popper, warns that unlimited tolerance can destroy tolerance itself. If a society accepts even the most intolerant voices without limit, those voices can undermine freedom and diversity. The lesson is that tolerance must sometimes refuse intolerance to survive. It's not about silencing ideas, but about protecting open societies from collapse. One way to make sense of this is through a principle of simplicity. Occam's razor teaches that when faced with competing explanations, the simplest one is often best. Named after William of Ockham, it isn't about laziness, but about avoiding unnecessary assumptions. For example, if your roof leaks, it's probably rain, not secret agents. It's a guide to clear reasoning, reminding us to cut away clutter and focus on explanations supported by the least speculation. But sometimes explanations aren't simple. They evolve through conflict. The Hegelian dialectic is a way of understanding progress through thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. An idea meets opposition, and from the clash, a new synthesis emerges. This cycle repeats, driving change in thought, politics, and culture. It's not a rigid formula, but a lens to see how ideas evolve, shaped through clashes, not smooth agreement. And clashes often appear most strongly in the mind itself. Dualism, linked to Descartes, is the belief that mind and body are two distinct substances. The body is physical, measurable, and subject to natural laws. The mind feels immaterial, harder to explain through science alone. Dualism raises the mind-body problem. How can something non-physical cause physical actions? The debate continues, challenging neuroscience, philosophy, and our sense of identity. In contrast, monism suggests unity rather than division. Monism is the idea that everything is made of one fundamental substance. Where dualism splits mind and body, monism insists they are expressions of the same reality. For some, this substance is physical matter. For others, it is consciousness itself. Monism simplifies the picture of existence, suggesting unity beneath divisions, and continues to influence science, spirituality, and theories of universal connection. So how should we act in such a world? One answer is utilitarianism, the idea of the greatest good for the greatest number. Utilitarianism measures morality by outcomes. The right action is the one that produces the most happiness or least suffering. Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill championed this view, weighing pleasure and pain like a moral equation. Critics argue it overlooks individual rights, but its practicality makes it influential in politics, law, and everyday decision-making. But morality isn't always about results. It can also be about duty. Deontology, developed by Immanuel Kant, argues that morality comes from duty, not consequences. Some actions are right or wrong in themselves, regardless of outcome. Kant's categorical imperative says we should act only in ways we could will as universal laws. Deontology provides clarity, but can feel rigid in practice. Aristotle offered another angle, virtue ethics, where morality comes from character. Virtue ethics focuses on developing good character rather than following strict rules or weighing outcomes. The aim is not just to act right in isolated moments, but to cultivate virtues like courage, honesty, and kindness. Living well is about balance, known as the golden mean, avoiding both excess and deficiency. It asks, who should I become? Not just, what must I do? These frameworks collide most famously in the trolley problem, a moral thought experiment. The trolley problem presents a runaway train heading toward 5 people. You can pull a lever to divert it, but it will kill one instead. Do you act or not? The puzzle tests utilitarian logic against moral intuition. It asks whether causing harm can be justified to save more lives, and whether morality can ever be reduced to calculation. Which leads naturally to the problem of evil. This problem challenges the idea of an all-powerful, all-good God. If such a God exists, why is there suffering and cruelty in the world? Some argue evil is necessary for free will. Others say suffering has hidden purposes. For believers and skeptics alike, the tension between divine goodness and real-world pain is one of philosophy's deepest dilemmas. So, what if morality itself is relative? Moral relativism says right and wrong depend on culture, society, or personal perspective rather than absolutes. What's moral in one place may be immoral in another. It encourages tolerance, but risks excusing harm. The tension lies in whether we can judge across cultures, or if morality exists only within its context. And if morality isn't absolute, maybe it comes from agreement. Social contract theory suggests societies exist because people consent to surrender some freedoms in exchange for order and protection. Hobbes imagined life without it as nasty, brutish, and short. Locke and Rousseau saw cooperation as beneficial. This idea underpins modern politics, arguing that power is legitimate only when it serves those who consent. But are such ideas built in or learned? Tabula rasa, meaning blank slate, suggests humans are born without innate ideas, with knowledge shaped by experience. John Locke opposed the belief in inborn truths, arguing environment, education, and culture define us. The idea remains influential in debates about psychology, development, and behavior, which raises another question. Where does consciousness itself come from? Panpsychism argues consciousness is a fundamental feature of the universe, present in everything from atoms to animals. It challenges the notion that consciousness simply emerges at higher complexity. Though controversial, panpsychism offers a bridge between science and philosophy, addressing why consciousness feels so elusive. And if consciousness isn't limited to humans, what about our future? Posthumanism explores what comes after the human. It questions human-centered thinking, considering whether technology, AI, and biology will transform us beyond recognition. It also widens ethics to include animals, machines, and ecosystems. Posthumanism asks whether identity and rights will shift in a future where human limits blur with digital and genetic possibilities. To look forward, though, we first look back at human motivation. Maslow's hierarchy of needs maps growth from survival to self-actualization. At the base are food and shelter, followed by safety, love, and esteem. At the top sits the fulfillment of potential. Maslow argued unmet lower needs hold us back. Though simplified, the model remains a powerful way to think about growth, priorities, and well-being. Building on that comes self-determination theory, focused on autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Self-determination theory says motivation thrives when these three needs are met. Autonomy is making our own choices. Competence is feeling effective. Relatedness is connection with others. When blocked, we feel powerless, unskilled, or isolated. The theory explains conditions for flourishing and growth. But growth can be disrupted when beliefs clash. Cognitive dissonance is the discomfort of holding conflicting beliefs or behaviors. For example, knowing smoking is harmful but smoking anyway creates tension. People resolve it by denying, justifying, or changing behavior. This explains stubbornness and resistance to change, highlighting how powerful the drive for inner consistency can be. And sometimes the problem isn't conflict, but seeking agreement. Confirmation bias is the tendency to notice, remember, and value evidence that supports what we already believe, while ignoring contradictions. It fuels superstition, politics, and polarization. Recognizing this bias is key to critical thinking, reminding us to question assumptions, which connects to another bias: how we judge others. The fundamental attribution error is our habit of blaming someone's character for their behavior while overlooking the situation. If cut off in traffic, we assume rudeness, not emergency. With ourselves, we do the opposite, excusing mistakes. This bias fuels misunderstanding and conflict, and our judgments are shaped even earlier by first impressions. Anchoring bias is when the first piece of information sets a reference point that shapes all later judgments. A high first price makes others seem cheap. It shows how sticky initial impressions can be. This connects with the halo effect, where one trait colors all others. If someone is attractive, we assume intelligence or kindness too. The halo effect distorts fairness, while its opposite, the horn effect, lets one flaw overshadow strengths. Both show how fragile and biased our perceptions can be. Sometimes we even overestimate how much others notice us at all. The spotlight effect, feeling more noticed than you are, sounds like it would have a positive outcome. After all, who doesn't like attention? In reality, the spotlight effect is the tendency to overestimate how much others notice us. We think everyone sees the stain on our shirt, when most don't. Psychologists Gilovich and colleagues showed that people often misjudge the attention others pay to them. This effect can fuel social anxiety and self-consciousness. Realizing that others are usually too busy thinking about themselves can ease unnecessary worry and embarrassment. Our beliefs don't just affect our emotions, they can alter our bodies. Nothing shows this better than the placebo effect. The placebo effect occurs when a person's expectations produce real changes in health or well-being, even if the treatment is inactive. Believing a sugar pill is medicine can reduce pain or improve mood. The power lies in the mind-body connection, showing how expectation influences biology. Though not a substitute for genuine treatment, the placebo effect reveals how deeply belief can shape physical experience. But expectation cuts both ways. The nocebo effect shows how harm can come through negative expectation. The nocebo effect is the darker twin of the placebo effect. When people expect negative outcomes, they may experience them, even from harmless substances or situations. Being told a pill will cause headaches can trigger real headaches. This demonstrates how suggestion and mindset can worsen health. The nocebo effect highlights the importance of communication, trust, and framing in medicine, as expectations themselves can create genuine suffering. Our minds are powerful, but not always kind. Consider imposter syndrome, the sense of doubting your own success. Imposter syndrome is the feeling of being a fraud despite clear evidence of competence. High achievers often think they don't deserve success, attributing it to luck or timing. This creates anxiety, perfectionism, and fear of being exposed. Though not a clinical disorder, it's a widespread pattern, especially in demanding careers. Overcoming it involves recognizing achievements as earned, not accidental, and reframing self-doubt as a normal part of growth. So where do we place control for success? Inside ourselves or out? This is the essence of locus of control. Locus of control refers to whether people see outcomes as controlled by their own actions, internal, or by outside forces like luck and fate, external. An internal locus fosters responsibility and persistence. An external locus can breed helplessness, but also reduces self-blame in hard times. Most people hold a mix, and balance is key. Too much of either can distort how we navigate challenges. When the balance is right, something special happens. Flow state, a feeling of total absorption in activity. Flow state, described by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, is when a person is fully immersed in an activity, losing track of time and self-consciousness. It happens when challenges and skills are balanced, creating focus and enjoyment. Artists, athletes, and gamers often describe flow as energizing and deeply satisfying. Achieving flow boosts performance and creativity, showing how humans thrive when effort feels effortless and engagement feels complete. But the opposite can also occur. Learned helplessness, the painful decision to give up after failure. Learned helplessness occurs when repeated failures or uncontrollable events teach someone to stop trying, even when change is possible. Martin Seligman's experiments with animals showed this effect, and it applies to people facing chronic stress or hardship. It can contribute to depression and low motivation. Breaking the cycle requires new experiences of success, rebuilding confidence that actions can make a difference after all. Helplessness is tied to learning. Consider Pavlovian conditioning, the linking of stimulus and response. Pavlovian, or classical conditioning, is when a neutral stimulus becomes associated with a response. Ivan Pavlov showed this with dogs, pairing food with a bell until the bell alone triggered salivation. Humans learn similar associations. A song can spark nostalgia, a smell can trigger memory. This concept underpins advertising, therapy, and habits, revealing how much of behavior is shaped by automatic, conditioned responses. But behavior is not just about triggers, it's also shaped by consequences. This is operant conditioning. Operant conditioning, developed by B.F. Skinner, is learning through rewards and punishments. Positive reinforcement, like praise, strengthens behavior. Negative reinforcement removes discomfort, encouraging behavior. Punishment discourages actions, though often less effectively. operant conditioning explains animal training, parenting, and workplace incentives. It highlights how environments shape behavior and how consistent reinforcement or neglect can create lasting patterns of motivation, discipline, and avoidance. And sometimes the environment shapes whether we act at all. That's the bystander effect. The bystander effect is when people are less likely to help in emergencies if others are present. Responsibility spreads thin, so each person assumes someone else will act. Famous cases like the murder of Kitty Genovese sparked research into this phenomenon. The effect shows how group dynamics can suppress individual responsibility. Awareness helps counter it, reminding us that stepping forward often requires conscious effort. At the other end of the spectrum, empathy can drive connection. Enter mirror neurons, the brain's empathy system. Mirror neurons are brain cells that fire both when we perform an action and when we observe someone else doing it. Discovered in monkeys, they are thought to play a role in empathy, imitation, and learning. Watching someone smile can trigger neural activity as if we smiled ourselves. Though research is ongoing, mirror neurons offer insight into human connection and how we intuitively resonate with others. Empathy itself depends on another ability, theory of mind, our capacity to see other perspectives. Theory of mind is the ability to understand that others have thoughts, feelings, and perspectives different from our own. It typically develops in early childhood, allowing empathy and social interaction. Without it, predicting others' behavior is difficult. Conditions like autism may involve differences in theory of mind. This concept underpins communication, cooperation, and storytelling, letting us imagine and respond to minds beyond our own. And the earliest test of this ability comes in childhood through bonds described by attachment theory. Attachment theory, pioneered by John Bowlby, explains how early relationships with caregivers shape future emotional bonds. Secure attachment leads to healthier trust and intimacy, while insecure or avoidant patterns can cause difficulties in adult relationships. Attachment styles, secure, anxious, avoidant, or disorganized, offer insight into behavior in love, friendship, and stress. The theory shows how deeply early experiences echo across a lifetime of human connection. But bonds between individuals also shape entire economies. This is where the invisible hand comes in. The invisible hand, described by Adam Smith, is the idea that individuals pursuing their own self-interest can unintentionally benefit society. Buyers and sellers, each seeking advantage, create supply, demand, and efficient distribution without central control. It paints markets as self-correcting. Critics argue it overlooks inequality and exploitation. Still, the metaphor remains central to economics, influencing how people imagine trade, competition, and the pursuit of prosperity. And the engine of those markets is supply and demand. Supply and demand is the basic force balancing economics. Prices rise when demand exceeds supply and fall when supply is abundant. This simple relationship shapes markets, wages, and production. Though often taught with neat curves, real-world dynamics are more complex, influenced by psychology, politics, and power. Still, supply and demand explains much of everyday life, from rising house prices to seasonal sales in shops. Yet every choice carries a hidden price, known as opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is the value of the next best alternative you forego when making a decision. Choosing to work late might cost you rest, family time, or a hobby. Economists use the idea to show that every choice has hidden trade-offs. It encourages careful evaluation, not just of what you gain, but also what you lose. Recognizing opportunity costs sharpens decision-making in business and life. And when choices involve shared resources, problems multiply. This is the tragedy of the commons. The tragedy of the commons describes how individuals acting in self-interest can deplete shared resources, harming everyone. Examples include overfishing, pollution, and climate change. Each person benefits from using more, but the collective result is collapse. The concept highlights the need for cooperation, regulation, or shared responsibility. Without balance, the commons, whether land, water, or atmosphere, cannot sustain the demands placed upon it by society. The same dilemma is reflected in human trust, captured by the prisoner's dilemma. The prisoner's dilemma is a game theory scenario where two individuals must decide whether to cooperate or betray each other. Mutual cooperation brings moderate benefits, but betrayal can give one person an advantage while punishing the other. If both betray, both lose. It illustrates mistrust, competition, and the difficulty of achieving cooperation when self-interest seems safer. The dilemma explains dynamics in politics, business, and relationships. This leads us into game theory, the study of strategies in conflict and cooperation. Game theory models decisions where outcomes depend on others' choices, negotiations, auctions, even arms races. Strategies range from competition to cooperation, with payoffs depending on prediction. It highlights the complexity of human interaction, showing how the best move often depends not just on logic, but on anticipating the behavior of others. And those interactions aren't distributed equally. The Pareto principle reminds us that 80% of results often come from 20% of causes. In business, a small share of customers may drive most profits. In life, a handful of habits create most progress. The rule isn't exact, but it illustrates imbalance. Focusing on the vital few rather than the trivial many helps prioritize efforts, making it a favorite principle in productivity and management. Which raises the question, why do advantages keep compounding? The Matthew effect explains that success breeds success. Initial advantages snowball, while disadvantages deepen. In education, skilled students get more opportunities, widening gaps. In wealth, resources accumulate faster for those who already have them. The Matthew effect challenges the idea that outcomes are purely based on merit, showing how privilege can multiply over time. But money doesn't guarantee creativity. That comes from creative destruction. Coined by economist Joseph Schumpeter, it describes how old industries die as new ones emerge. The rise of cars destroyed the horse and buggy trade, but created entire new industries. Though painful, destruction makes space for growth. The concept reminds us that resilience requires adapting to cycles of renewal, not clinging to outdated ways of working. And innovation still needs stability. Enter the broken windows theory, which tells us that small disorder breeds big disorder. Broken windows theory suggests that visible signs of neglect, like graffiti or litter, can encourage more crime and decline. The idea is that tolerating small issues signals that no one cares, leading to larger problems. Critics argue the theory can justify heavy policing, but it also highlights the importance of environment in shaping behavior. Clean, cared-for spaces encourage respect, order, and social trust. But order alone fails to explain what holds societies together. Social capital is the value created by trust, networks, and cooperation between people. A community rich in social capital can solve problems together, share resources, and support one another in hard times. Unlike financial capital, it can't be bought directly, only earned through relationships. The concept shows how bonds of trust form the hidden glue that holds societies, organizations, and even families together. Those bonds extend beyond people into skills and education. Human capital refers to the economic value of a person's knowledge, skills, and health. An educated, skilled workforce fuels productivity and growth. Governments and businesses invest in training, healthcare, and education because stronger human capital means stronger economies. But the concept also highlights inequality. Since not everyone has equal access to these resources, it reminds us that talent is shaped as much as it is born. And it's not just skills, but the cultural polish that matters. Cultural capital, introduced by sociologist Pierre Bourdieu, is the advantage gained through cultural knowledge, style, and education. It can be language, taste in art, or even confidence in elite settings. Cultural capital explains why two equally skilled people may be treated differently, depending on their background. It highlights how privilege is often invisible, carried in mannerisms, accents, and opportunities we take for granted. When privilege becomes dominant, culture itself can be controlled. Cultural hegemony, a concept from Antonio Gramsci, describes how the ruling class maintains power not only through force, but by shaping norms, values, and ideas. When people accept the worldview of the powerful as common sense, resistance weakens. Advertising, media, and education all reinforce hegemony. It shows that control doesn't always require chains. It can be woven into the fabric of everyday thought. Yet culture can also bring people together in uplifting ways. Collective effervescence, described by Emile Durkheim, is the shared energy people feel when they gather in rituals, festivals, or even concerts. It creates a sense of unity and belonging as individuals lose themselves in the group. This emotional spark strengthens social bonds and reinforces values. Collective effervescence reminds us that humans are not just rational individuals. We're creatures who thrive on shared experiences. But even within groups, strange dynamics play out. The Peter Principle suggests that people in hierarchies are promoted until they reach their level of incompetence. A skilled worker becomes a manager, but may lack management skills, so they stagnate. Over time, organizations fill with people stuck at roles they can't excel in. The idea is humorous but revealing, showing how structures can unintentionally reward the wrong traits and limit efficiency. And organizations can waste time in other ways too. Parkinson's law states that work expands to fill the time available. If a task could take 1 hour, but you give it a day, it will somehow stretch to a day. This insight applies to bureaucracies, which grow in size and complexity regardless of need. The law warns against inefficiency and procrastination, reminding us that time limits can sharpen focus and improve productivity. How do we decide what's worth doing? Often by looking to others. Social proof is the tendency to copy the actions of others when we're uncertain. If a restaurant is full, we assume it must be good. Online reviews and likes are modern examples. Social proof helps us navigate complexity, but it also makes us vulnerable to herd behavior. It shows how influence is contagious and why crowds can drive both wise choices and foolish trends. And trends spread faster than we realize. Diffusion of innovations explains how new ideas, products, and technologies spread through society. Innovators adopt first, followed by early adopters, the majority, and finally laggards. From smartphones to social media, each wave builds momentum until adoption becomes mainstream. The theory shows why some ideas catch on and others fade, highlighting the importance of timing, networks, and trust in shaping cultural change. But not everyone experiences culture the same way. Intersectionality, a concept by Kimberlé Crenshaw, describes how different forms of discrimination overlap. A person may face racism, sexism, and classism simultaneously, and these aren't just additive. They interact in unique ways. Intersectionality highlights how identity is layered and complex. It challenges one-size-fits-all approaches to justice, showing that social inequality must be understood through the intersections where power, privilege, and oppression collide. Oppression and fairness aren't just social issues, they're tied to science too. The theory of relativity, introduced by Albert Einstein, transformed how we understand time and space. Special relativity showed that time and space change depending on speed. with the speed of light as the cosmic limit. General relativity went further, describing gravity as the curvature of space-time caused by mass. These theories revolutionized physics, from GPS satellites to black holes, reshaping how we see the universe itself. And the deeper we look, the stranger reality becomes. Special relativity focuses on the relationship between time and speed. It shows that the faster you travel, the slower time passes for you relative to someone else. This isn't science fiction, but proven physics, confirmed in experiments with fast-moving particles and satellites. The theory challenges our everyday intuitions about time, reminding us that reality is far stranger and less absolute than it appears. Gravity, too, bends reality in unexpected ways. General relativity explains gravity not as a force pulling objects together, but as space-time curving around massive objects. Earth orbits the Sun not because of a pull, but because space itself is bent. This theory predicted phenomena like gravitational waves and black holes. Its elegance reshaped modern cosmology, and it remains one of the most profound achievements in science, changing how we see the universe's structure. But at smaller scales, the rules change entirely. Quantum mechanics explores the world of the very small, where particles behave unpredictably and sometimes defy logic. Electrons act like both particles and waves. Outcomes appear probabilistic, not certain. Quantum theory underpins modern technology, from semiconductors to MRI machines. Yet its strangeness unsettles our assumptions about cause, effect, and reality itself. The quantum world is a reminder that the universe is both mysterious and astonishing, with uncertainty built into the fabric of physics. The Heisenberg uncertainty principle states that you cannot simultaneously measure a particle's exact position and momentum. The more precisely you know one, the less precisely you can know the other. This isn't about faulty instruments. It's a fundamental property of nature. The principle shatters the dream of perfect predictability and shows that uncertainty is not an obstacle to science, but part of reality itself. And yet, even across vast distances, particles can be strangely connected. Quantum entanglement describes how two particles can remain linked, so that changing one instantly affects the other, no matter the distance between them. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. Experiments confirm it, though explanations are debated. Entanglement is central to quantum computing and encryption, and it raises profound questions about causality, connection, and whether reality is more interconnected than we ever imagined. Some ideas sound like thought experiments, yet they shape real science. Schrödinger's cat is a famous paradox illustrating quantum superposition. Imagine a cat in a box with a mechanism that has a 50% chance of killing it. Until observed, the cat is both alive and dead. Schrödinger used this absurd image to highlight the strangeness of quantum mechanics. Though a metaphor, it continues to spark debate about observation, reality, and the role of the observer in science. And observation isn't the only thing that blurs categories. Wave-particle duality is the idea that light and other particles behave as both waves and particles. In experiments, light creates interference patterns like a wave, but also hits detectors as discrete particles. This dual nature challenges classical categories, showing that reality isn't neatly one thing or another. Wave-particle duality demonstrates that our models of nature are tools, not literal mirrors of truth. Physicists have even suggested deeper layers below particles themselves. String theory proposes that the fundamental building blocks of the universe are tiny vibrating strings rather than point-like particles. Different vibrations create different particles, much like notes on a violin. Though still theoretical, string theory seeks to unite quantum mechanics and relativity into one framework. It's ambitious and controversial, but it captures the human drive to find ultimate simplicity beneath overwhelming complexity. Even apparent randomness may have patterns. Chaos theory shows how complex systems can behave unpredictably, even when governed by simple rules. Whether ecosystems and even economies are sensitive to initial conditions, meaning small changes can lead to huge effects. This unpredictability doesn't mean disorder, it reveals hidden patterns and strange attractors. Chaos theory teaches that complexity is not the absence of order, but a richer, subtler form of organization, and the smallest actions can ripple far into the future. The butterfly effect, part of chaos theory, suggests that a butterfly flapping its wings in Brazil could set off a tornado elsewhere. While not literal, it illustrates sensitivity to initial conditions. Small actions can trigger vast, unpredictable outcomes. The idea resonates beyond science, reminding us how minor decisions, coincidences, or accidents can profoundly shape lives, history, and the unfolding story of the world. The limits of knowledge extend even into mathematics. Gödel's incompleteness. Theorems show that in any sufficiently powerful mathematical system, there will be true statements that cannot be proven within the system itself. Kurt Gödel's work shattered the dream of mathematics as a complete, self-contained system of truth. Instead, it revealed that uncertainty is baked even into logic. These theorems highlight both the power and the limits of human reasoning. And sometimes limits create beauty. Fractals are infinitely complex patterns that repeat at every scale. Think of a fern leaf or a coastline, where zooming in reveals the same shape again and again. Fractals exist in nature and mathematics, showing how simple rules can generate endless variety. They're not just beautiful but practical, helping to model clouds, mountains, and even market fluctuations. Fractals reveal order hidden within apparent chaos. Even time itself has rules we can't escape. The second law of thermodynamics states that entropy, or disorder, always increases in a closed system. Energy naturally disperses, heat flows from hot to cold, and order decays into randomness. This law explains why perpetual motion machines are impossible, and why systems eventually break down. It's a principle that links physics to everyday life, reminding us that decay and change are universal constants. And it gives us the arrow of time. The arrow of time describes why time moves in one direction, from past to future. It is tied to entropy, as the universe naturally evolves from order to disorder. We remember the past, but not the future, because memory itself depends on increasing entropy. The arrow of time remains one of the great mysteries of physics, connecting cosmology, thermodynamics, and our lived experience of existence. But time itself had a beginning. Or did it? The Big Bang Theory proposes that the universe began around 13.8 billion years ago from an incredibly dense, hot singularity that expanded rapidly. Evidence includes cosmic background radiation and galaxies moving apart. It reshaped our view of origins, showing the universe is not eternal but dynamic. Yet questions remain. What came before, and why did it happen? The Big Bang frames modern cosmology's greatest puzzles. Not everyone agreed with the idea of a beginning. The steady-state theory argued that the universe has always existed, with new matter continuously created to maintain its density as it expands. Once popular, it fell out of favor as evidence for the Big Bang mounted. Still, the theory shows how science evolves through competition of ideas. Even when abandoned, such models highlight the creativity involved in explaining our universe's mysteries. And perhaps our universe isn't the only one at all. The multiverse hypothesis suggests that our universe might be just one of countless universes, each with different physical laws or constants. Some versions arise from quantum theory, others from cosmology. While unproven, the idea captures imagination, offering possible answers to why our universe seems fine-tuned for life. The multiverse remains controversial, but reflects humanity's drive to push beyond visible boundaries in search of explanation. Which raises the question, are we living in reality or a program? The simulation hypothesis speculates that our universe could be an advanced computer simulation created by a higher intelligence. If technology keeps advancing, future beings might simulate entire realities. Philosopher Nick Bostrom argues it's statistically possible we already live inside one. Though unprovable, the idea sparks debates about free will, purpose, and whether discovering glitches might reveal our reality's true nature. And even if simulated, life appears strangely tailored to us. The anthropic principle states that the universe must appear suited for life because we exist to observe it. Some interpret this as fine-tuning, suggesting deeper design or purpose. Others see it as inevitable. We wouldn't notice a universe in which we couldn't exist. The principle blurs science and philosophy, asking whether life is an accident of physics or something woven into cosmic design. Few places test these questions more than black holes. The black hole information paradox arises when physics collides with mystery. Black holes absorb matter and light, but Stephen Hawking suggested information is lost forever inside them, violating quantum principles. Others argue the information might be preserved in subtle ways. The paradox remains unresolved, forcing scientists to rethink the laws of physics. It symbolizes the limits of human understanding at the edge of the universe. And beyond visible matter, most of the cosmos is unseen. Dark matter is invisible mass that doesn't emit light, but exerts gravitational pull, holding galaxies together. It makes up about 27% of the universe, yet we cannot see or directly detect it. Scientists infer its existence from galaxy motion and cosmic structure. Dark matter reminds us that most of reality is hidden, and that our familiar world rests on unknown foundations we're only beginning to grasp. The mystery deepens with what drives expansion itself. Dark energy is the force causing the universe's expansion to accelerate. It makes up nearly 70% of the cosmos, yet its nature is unknown. Discovered through observations of distant supernova, dark energy reshaped cosmology. It suggests the universe's fate may be endless expansion. The concept is a humbling reminder that most of reality is dominated by forces we cannot yet explain or fully understand, and life itself is shaped by invisible forces too. Evolution by natural selection, described by Charles Darwin, explains how species adapt and change over time. Organisms with traits better suited to their environment survive and reproduce, passing those traits forward. Over generations, small changes accumulate into major shifts. Evolution is supported by fossils, genetics, and observation. It explains life's diversity, not as fixed design, but as a process of continual adaptation and survival. But survival is not fixed in our genes alone. Epigenetics explores how environment and experience influence gene expression without altering DNA itself. Stress, diet, and behavior can turn genes on or off, affecting health and even passing effects to future generations. Epigenetics bridges nature and nurture, showing genes are not static instructions but flexible scripts. It highlights the complex dance between biology and environment in shaping who we are. And language shapes us just as much as biology. The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis argues that language influences how we think and perceive reality. For example, cultures with many words for snow may notice its subtleties more. While debated, research suggests language does affect cognition, memory, and worldview. It means words aren't just tools to describe reality, they can shape how we experience it. The hypothesis invites us to see speech as a lens, not a mirror. Those lenses extend into all kinds of cultural symbols. Semiotics is the study of signs and symbols, and how meaning is created through them. A red rose may signal love, while traffic lights govern behavior through shared understanding. Semiotics highlights how communication depends not just on words, but on images, gestures, and contexts. It reveals how meaning is socially constructed and how signs can be manipulated, especially in media, art, and advertising. And beneath the symbols, there are hidden structures. Structuralism views culture, language, and even myths as built on deep structures, patterns underlying surface details. It suggests that by analyzing these systems, we can uncover universal rules of human thought. While criticized as rigid, structuralism influenced fields from anthropology to literature. It provides a framework for seeing culture not as random, but as organized, patterned, and connected by hidden frameworks beneath the surface. But some thinkers wanted to dismantle those very structures. Deconstruction, introduced by Jacques Derrida, is a method of critically analyzing texts and ideas to reveal contradictions and assumptions within them. It doesn't simply destroy meaning, but shows that language is unstable with multiple interpretations. Deconstruction challenges absolute truths and highlights ambiguity. Though sometimes accused of obscurity, it reshaped philosophy and literary criticism, encouraging skepticism towards certainty and authority in language and ideas. This skepticism became central to an entire era of thought. Postmodernism is the rejection of grand narratives and universal truths. Emerging in the late 20th century, it celebrates diversity, pluralism, and playfulness in meaning. Postmodernism often challenges authority, mocks rigid categories, and questions whether objective truth is possible. Critics say it leads to relativism, but it remains influential in art, literature, and culture, reflecting skepticism in an age of shifting perspectives and uncertainty. Stories still endure, though, across cultures. The hero's journey, identified by Joseph Campbell, describes a universal narrative arc. A hero leaves the ordinary world, faces trials, receives help, confronts a final challenge, and returns transformed. From ancient myths to modern films, this structure resonates deeply. The hero's journey reflects psychological growth and human yearning for meaning. It shows how stories are more than entertainment. They echo timeless struggles of transformation and self-discovery. And within those stories are recurring figures. Archetypes, popularized by Carl Jung, are universal symbols and character types found in myths and dreams: the hero, the mentor, the trickster. Archetypes shape how we tell stories and interpret the world. They tap into the collective unconscious, shared imagery across humanity. Archetypes reveal that beneath individual experiences, humans share common symbolic patterns that help us navigate identity, morality, and the mysteries of the psyche. That shared imagery hints at something deeper still. The collective unconscious, another Jungian idea, suggests all humans inherit a shared layer of the mind containing symbols, myths, and archetypes. Unlike personal unconscious, shaped by experience, the collective unconscious is universal, passed down through generations. It explains why people across cultures produce similar myths and symbols. The idea remains controversial, but it highlights the possibility of hidden unity beneath human diversity. And ideas themselves behave like living things. Meme theory, introduced by Richard Dawkins, proposes that cultural ideas spread and evolve like genes. Memes, songs, fashions, beliefs replicate, mutate, and compete for survival in human minds. The concept predates internet memes but explains them too. It highlights how culture evolves through imitation and variation. Meme theory shifts perspective. We don't just shape ideas. Ideas also shape us, spreading beyond individuals to become cultural organisms. But sometimes those ideas are shaped by power itself. Orientalism, described by Edward Said, is the critique of how the West historically portrayed the East as exotic, inferior, or dangerous. These stereotypes served colonial power, reinforcing dominance. Orientalism shows how cultural representations are never neutral, they carry political weight. By examining how the East was imagined, Sayed revealed how power shapes perception. The concept challenges us to question cultural assumptions and hidden biases. And questioning culture requires recognizing its many standards. Cultural relativism argues that beliefs and practices should be understood in their cultural context, not judged by external standards. What seems strange or wrong in one society may make sense in another. It fosters empathy and reduces ethnocentrism, but risks excusing harmful traditions. The idea asks us to balance respect for diversity with universal human rights, reminding us that morality is never simple. That balance has long defined debates over culture itself. High versus low culture separates elite art forms, like opera or classical literature, from popular ones like television or pop music. Historically, high culture was valued more, but postmodernism blurred the line. Today, popular culture is studied seriously, while high culture is challenged as elitist. The concept shows how cultural value is socially constructed, revealing that taste is tied to power, class, and identity, and every cultural work exists in relation to others. Intertextuality is the idea that no text stands alone. Each draws meaning from other texts. A novel may echo myths, a film may reference earlier films, even memes remix past culture. Intertextuality highlights how meaning arises from connections, not isolation. It reflects the web of cultural influence, reminding us that creativity is less about invention from nothing and more about endless reinterpretation and dialogue. Some movements, though, tried to bypass meaning entirely. Surrealism embraced dream logic and irrational imagery to bypass rational thought. Emerging in art and literature, it sought to unlock the unconscious, drawing on Freud's theories. Surrealists painted melting clocks, wrote automatic texts, and staged bizarre juxtapositions. Their aim was to free imagination from control. Surrealism blurred art and life, revealing how the strange and the subconscious shape creativity and perception. And others insisted that less could mean more. Minimalism is a style in art, design, and lifestyle that values simplicity, clarity, and reduction. In art, it means stripping away detail to focus on essentials, clean lines, empty space, repetition. In life, it means owning less and focusing on what matters. Minimalism challenges consumerism and clutter, showing how restraint can create beauty, peace, and meaning. It's a reminder that sometimes subtraction is the real luxury. Symbolism is the use of images, objects, or signs to carry deeper significance. A dove might symbolize peace, or a storm might symbolize turmoil. Symbolism works because it allows layers of meaning beneath the surface of a text or artwork. It turns the ordinary into the profound, inviting interpretation. The concept reminds us that much of culture communicates indirectly through shared signs and resonant metaphors, and some movements turned back to emotion and nature for inspiration. Romanticism was a cultural movement that emphasized passion, imagination, and the beauty of nature over rationality. Emerging in the late 18th century, it celebrated individual feeling, creativity, and rebellion against industrial order. Romantic artists painted wild landscapes, poets praised the sublime, and composers filled music with intense emotion. Romanticism reminds us of the human longing for meaning in raw feeling and untamed experience. But others wanted art to reflect reality as it is. Realism arose in the 19th century as a response to Romanticism. It focused on portraying life accurately, without exaggeration or idealization. Writers and painters depicted ordinary people, social struggles, and daily life. Realism believed truth was best found in careful observation. It reshaped literature and art, highlighting that stories about common experience could carry as much weight and importance as tales of heroes and gods. From truth came the drive to break traditions. Modernism was a 20th century movement that sought to reinvent art, literature, and culture. It broke with tradition, experimenting with form, perspective, and style. Writers fragmented narratives, artists painted abstractly, and architects embraced functional design. Modernism captured the uncertainty of a rapidly changing world. Though sometimes disorienting, it opened new ways of seeing, insisting that art must evolve alongside the modern human experience. And yet, some insisted life itself was absurd. Absurdist theatre explored meaninglessness and confusion through drama. Playwrights like Samuel Beckett wrote works where dialogue looped, logic collapsed, and characters waited endlessly. These plays mirrored existential ideas that life lacks inherent purpose, yet we must go on living. Absurdist theatre confronted audiences with discomfort, humour, and strangeness. Forcing reflection on the human condition, it proved theatre could reveal the absurdity woven into ordinary existence. Some artists pushed even further, discarding convention entirely. Avant-garde refers to experimental art that challenges established norms. It embraces risk, provokes, and often shocks audiences by defying expectations. From radical performance art to experimental film, avant-garde work tests the boundaries of what counts as art at all. Though often misunderstood at first, avant-garde innovations frequently influence mainstream culture later. The concept embodies the idea that progress requires pioneers willing to push past comfort zones. And finally, beyond reason and experiment, came the search for the spiritual. Transcendentalism was a 19th century movement in America that emphasized intuition, self-reliance, and a deep spiritual connection to nature. Thinkers like Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau argued that truth could be found not through institutions, but within the individual's direct experience of the natural world. Transcendentalism celebrated simplicity, independence, and inner growth, leaving a legacy of spiritual philosophy rooted in both nature and freedom.